few modern figures in society in our conversation today has changed the conversation about conviction, like Charlie Kirk. We're leaning into a conversation that has challenged how we see conviction, how we see courage, how we see calling. What happens when conviction collides with culture? And how can we imagine greater versions of ourselves? Welcome to Imagine Greater, the podcast where we challenge the status quo and reimagine what's possible in business, in life, and in leadership. Today, we are exploring faith. We are exploring purpose. We are exploring the power of what happens when we dare to believe that we can be more in life, that we can become more. I am Michelle Bethel Gibson, your host, and we're leaning into the conversation, to a conversation that has challenged how we see conviction, how we see courage, how we see calling. You see, few modern figures in society in our conversation today has changed the conversation about conviction, like Charlie Kirk. He was an activist, he was a speaker, he was the founder of Turning Point USA. Now, whether you agree with his politics, his story focuses on and causes us to ask the deeper questions of what does it really mean to stand up for what you and I believe? It asks the question, it causes us to ask this question of what happens when conviction collides with culture? And how can we imagine greater versions of ourselves with courage that's not loud but anchored in love? So the Word of God talks about in Proverbs 18 and 21, it says, the tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat the fruit thereof. You see, words can build or break. They can inspire or they can incite. And both Charlie and Tyler choices reveal how powerful conviction can become when it's not guided with compassion. They both let us know how powerful conviction can become when it's not guided by compassion. You see, some stories don't just make headlines. They test our humanity. The death of Charlie Kirk isn't only about politics. It isn't. Or is it only about ideology? It's about people, pain, purpose, and how easily passion without empathy can turn deadly. You see, let's acknowledge the shock of this. Nobody saw this coming, did they? You see, Charlie's death divided reactions. There was grief, there was anger, and there still is. And that's and reflection, right? Some even celebrate it. What happens when we stop seeing each other as people and start seeing each other as enemies? What happens when we stop seeing each other as people and start seeing each other as enemies? I remember this quote by Tupac. He said, not that we're not striving together, rolling together, doesn't mean that we're enemies. I still want you to eat, just not at my table. So we still want people to thrive and be successful. They may not be in our path, in our sphere of influence anymore, but we still want them to eat. So we need to see others as people, not as enemies. You see, let's get into the man behind all of this. You can't separate his message from who he really was. He shared his message with millions. But Charlie Kirk didn't wait because he didn't wait for permission. Charlie Kirk built his own table. He understood something powerful, that in the world, influence in this modern form of activism is more powerful than anything else. And let's face it, whether we like him, whether we agree with him, one thing we can all agree on, he had influence. So who was Charlie Kirk? He was a young visionary, dropped out of school, and he built Turning Point USA platform for conversations with youth activism. Husband and father, he's married to Erica, who's now Erica Kirk. They had two children. They had two children, and according to Charlie Kirk, he was a Christian. He was a Christian. That's how he identified himself. His calling was to defend faith, was to defend family and freedom, but often through confrontation and culture war. You see, while he defended, he caused confrontation. He had a lot of confrontation we can agree about, and it caused a culture war. His challenge, words meant to defend. Values sometimes wounded others. You see, in his defense of what he believed, many times he wounded others. So, what if Charlie Kirk imagined greater conversations instead of confrontation? Let's just think about that. What if he said, how can I seek to be more inclusive in what I'm talking about, even if people don't agree with me? And so that we're having conversations and not confrontations. What if faith had fueled more bridges than battles? Here's what Ephesians 4:29. You know, I always like to see what the Word of God has to say about everything. Do not let unwholesome talk come out of our mouths, but only what is helpful and building up of others. Is what you're saying helping? Did Charlie Kirk had a lot to say? Yes, he really did. Did it help? I don't know. The jury is still out on that one. Sometimes it did for me, and sometimes, well, it didn't. When we look at the many confrontations he had on various campuses, right? But the Word of God tells us how we should be as Christians. And since Charlie Kirk defined himself as a Christian, my question to you, was this talk always wholesome? Was it always building up? I'll leave you to decide on that one. So, let's talk about the tragedy of it all. Let's talk about Tyler Robinson's reaction to what Charlie Kirk had to say. Reaction to all that Charlie Kirk believed. What caused Tyler Robinson to behave, to kill this father, this husband, this friend, this brother that, let's face it, a lot of people love. Instead of using his voice, he used violence. He acted. His act didn't end in ideology. It deepened division and destroyed more lives. That's what it did. On one hand, he was helping and saving lives. And on the other hand, one act caused division and destroyed so many lives. Now we see two families who are grieving, and a nation who's questioning how we got here. So here's my question to you. What if Tyler had imagined greater, not revenge, but responsibility? What if he had shown up and he said, Mr. Kirk, how can we have a conversation about what's our responsibility in all of this? Rather than always be on the opposite side of confronting each other. What if instead of reacting with rage, he had responded, meaning Tyler, with reason, with truth, or with just dialogue, and let Charlie Kirk know, I'm not here to confront. I'm not here to argue. I'm not here to even change your mind. I'm just here to ask you one question, Mr. Kirk. How can you and I take responsibility? And out of that, bloom a better way of believing, of trusting, of change that will serve everyone here today. He could have shown up to one of Charlie Kirk's activism and outreach and tomorrow a better America, that Turning Point was marketing on the tour, right? They could have had a conversation, but instead, it looks different. It looks different for everyone. All right, so the Bible verse for this says, do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. There's always the good that we can do in the face of what looks like it's evil. That situation of Charlie Kirk's rhetoric, we could have turned that around for good. Courage has many faces. For one, it looks like standing boldly in public. That's Charlie Kirk. For another, it looks like enjoying a quietly private life of helping others. Both say the same thing. Both say that faith works. Both say that faith moves. Both changes everything. Both of them teaches us this, that courage has many faces. So what is the cost? What is the cost of all this rhetoric? And what is the responsibility of all of this talk? Because let's face it, we experience a lot of talk and we ourselves talk a lot, right? I'm talking now. But what is the cost of all the rhetoric and what is the responsibility as we talk, as I talk? I have a responsibility to you because I'm putting my opinion, what I have to say out there. And how that is taken, that's my responsibility. That's the responsibility of us here at Imagine Greater. For every time we open up our mouths, it comes with a cost and responsibility. You see, our words can be weaponized or they can heal. They build movements or they break people. Some may say Charlie Kirk both costs. On one hand, he broke it. He broke people. He built people by forming the organization Turning Point USA that gave many people a platform to have their voices heard, probably for the first time that otherwise would not have been heard. And that was a good thing. People were allowed to have their say. Whether he agreed, whether they agreed, they had their say. Then on another hand, people like Tyler Robinson got a different message. And it was one of division that he heard. He heard hate and he heard marginalization. But our words, don't use them as a weapon. Let's use them to heal. Which one do you want to be? Do you want to weaponize your words or do you want to heal with your words? You see, leaders have a moral weight. What we say sets emotional climates for others. It could be a beautiful, sunny, amazing, fabulous day. Or it can be a thunder and lightning storm. As a leader, which climate are you leaning towards? Silence isn't neutral. Whether we speak or stay quiet, we shape the culture. So don't be one of those people, oh, I'm just going to sit back and I have nothing to say. Well, your silence gives consent based on whichever room that you are in. Because if you're in a room where you're seeing people marginalized and hurt and you're quiet, be careful that one day you may be the person who's being marginalized and hurt and ridiculed and no one speaks up for you. Silence is not an option. Have your words been shaping your world? Have your words been shaping your world? And I'm gonna just go out there and say they have. Whether for good or bad, what we say matters. Our words are energy and they change the environment for good or for bad. So set the kind of climate that is for the betterment of all, not just for a select few. The Word of God says, everyone will have to give an account on the day of judgment for every empty word they have spoken. So, this world is not final. There is another world, the spiritual world, where the God of heaven's army have the final say. So make sure that what you say is breathing life and not death. Here's some tips to you. Before you post, before you preach, before you protest, I love this acronym, PAUSE. The P in the acronym says pray first. A, assess motives, whether yours and those of others. Well, you really can't always know the motive of others, but you can definitely know your motives. So assess your motive. Understand, that's the U. Understand impact. S, speak truth in love. Speak the truth, but do it in love, in a loving way, in a kind way, in a way that helps and build up and not tear down. And the E, elevate the conversation. Don't show up to the conversation and be like, well, I'm going to have my 2 cents, right? And you make the conversation worse. And it turns into a confrontation. Elevate it. Bring it to a higher level that causes leaders, that causes the people in the room to think differently, to think better, to reimagine what's possible for the change, for the betterment of others. Elevate the conversation. But here's the redemptive part. There is always a better way. There is redemption after all of this. You see, Kirk, act of forgiveness was one not of weakness but of spiritual strength. You see, we at Imagine Greater applaud her because she didn't wait to heal. She didn't wait for time to pass. In her pain, in that very moment, she forgave in real time. And that takes spiritual strength. Can you do that? Her husband was just gone down. And in that very moment, she said, I forgive. Only God can give her that kind of spiritual strength. So we applaud her. You see, we must understand that healing starts with compassion that meets conviction. Healing starts. And I know I pause on that because I am looking at all of this and all I'm thinking is, in any moment, at any time, where was the compassion? Where was the love? It's great for us to have convictions because only when we stand up for something does change begin. When we sit quiet, nothing happens. But where was the compassion in all of this? We must create spaces where disagreement doesn't destroy dignity. Faith calls us to love beyond ideology, to seek redemption, not revenge. Do I believe that he was a racist? Oh, no. Did I believe he had some opinions that I don't agree with? Yes. Yes, I do. Racism, I'm not saying that. But he had a different thought, a different belief system than I do. Than you do, or maybe. But then he still deserved compassion. He still deserved to be, I'm talking about Charlie Kirk, to be considered someone who was inspired to create change right where he was. He started an entire organization to do so. And that we must commend him for, right? Whether we agree with him or not. So I challenge you, our listeners at the Imagine Greater. I challenge you to imagine a world where activism builds, not breaks. I challenge you, we challenge you to imagine political courage. Anchored in empathy, we challenge you to imagine responding to hate with holiness, not hostility. Because the Bible, the Word of God, where we always go back for our foundation, he shows us in Micah 6 and 8, he has shown you, O mortal, you human being, what is good. God has shown us. And what does the Lord require of you, requires of me? To act justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with God. But act justly? Was there any justice for Charlie Kirk? Not in this instance. To love mercy. Can we have mercy for Tyler Robinson? And to walk humbly. Because today it is Tyler Robinson and it is the Charlie Kirk story. But tomorrow, we don't know when it's our turn. So let's walk humbly with God. Charlie Kirk believed he was fighting for truth. Tyler Robinson believed he was standing against harm. But both got caught in the storm of conviction without compassion. Both of them, both Charlie Kirk and Tyler Robinson, got caught in the mesh, in the storm of conviction without compassion. But somewhere in the middle between courage and obedience is the space God calls us to what? Imagine greater. God has called us to this, for us to imagine a better way of living, of speaking, of doing, of becoming, of changing the world, changing our world. And he says so in 2 Corinthians 5:8. All this is from God, who reconciled us to himself through Christ and gave us the ministry of reconciliation. So in that, we can reconcile our beliefs, our thoughts, our way of doing with one another. We don't have to see us as the almighty opinion, and that's it. It requires us to reconcile to others and come up, because John Maxwell says in his quote, one of us is never as smart as all of us. So how can we collectively imagine a better world? As we reflect, my call to action to you is the world doesn't need more opinions. It needs more conviction anchored in love. Engage across differences. Our differences are what makes for a beautiful world. Not just a better world, but beautiful world, right? Use your platforms to heal, not harm. Your words, your platform, your story, they all shape someone's tomorrow. If you think that what you say, how you act, how you behave, how we show up is affecting someone's tomorrow, I am certainly sure you would show up better. And that is my challenge. Always remember that on this other side of your words, on the other side of your action, is someone listening, leaning in. And their tomorrow is being shaped. Use your words with integrity, and use them with great intentions. Pray for both the families. I want us to pray. Both of the families are hurting. Behind Charlie Kirk is an amazing family. Behind Tyler Robinson is another amazing family. You see, the Kirks and the Robinsons have to now live with this tragedy for the rest of their lives. I also want you to encourage you to live out your faith in a way that lifts rather than labels. Live a faith that lifts and doesn't label. Oh, that's them. Oh, that's her. Oh, that's him. Oh, gee. We're all a part of this amazing human race. So stop labeling. Just realize that's another person. That's another human being. That's people with flesh and blood that when you cut, we all bleed red on any given Tuesday. Right? So let's reflect on these questions. Ask yourself this. What belief are you currently afraid to stand up for? Remember, I said silence is not an option. What courage? What could change if you imagine greater courage? Courage is standing in the face of adversity, in the face of everything that is seemingly wrong, and say, I, you, me, the friend next to you will be the difference maker for the good and the betterment of all. Ask yourself this. How can your faith guide you when criticism comes? Everyone has an opinion, and I said the world doesn't need another opinion. It needs conviction anchored in love, but people are gonna have their opinion anyway. But here's what. That's fine. They're entitled to their opinion. They're entitled to their criticism, because we live in a world, at least in the Bahamas and in the U.S., where there's freedom of speech, right? But how can you use your faith to guide you, regardless of criticism, regardless of opposition? Remember this, you don't have to be famous to be fearless. You don't have to be famous to be fearless. You just have to be faithful. So go out and be faithful. So as we close today, we want to take a deep breath and just breathe this beautiful oxygen, this beautiful life that God has given us. And remember, conviction isn't being loud. It's about being led. Being led by truth, by purpose, by God's quiet whisper that says, stand firm. I am with you. Breathe in And remember to stand firm, for God is with us. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining the team here at Imagine Greater Podcast. If this episode has inspired you, and I know it has, share with someone who needs encouragement to stand up for truth, to live boldly. Share the link, subscribe, let others know that we are reimagining the Charlie Kirk story, the Tyler Robinson story, in a more different way, from a perspective that builds up and doesn't tear down. Share the link, subscribe, and until next time, keep dreaming, keep believing, and always remember to imagine greater.